Type A women are often told, directly or indirectly, that the way they think is a problem, that they're too intense, too detailed, too responsible, too much. If they could just relax a little, stop overthinking, or care less, business would feel easier. But here's what rarely gets said out loud. Most Type A women aren't struggling because of lack of ability. They're struggling because the strengths that made them successful were never taught how to be directed. And when a strength goes undirected, it starts to get mislabeled as a flaw.
What makes this tricky is that these traits do work. They help you get ahead. They help you deliver results. They help you be trusted with more responsibility. So when someone suggests that your intensity or your thinking style is the issue, it doesn't quite sit right. But you also don't have the language to push back. You just know that business feels heavier than it should. Today we want to name something that almost never gets named. Type A women have real business advantages, not despite how their brain works, but because of it.
One of the biggest advantages Type A women bring into business is the ability to operate inside complexity without shutting down. Most Type A women didn't learn this skill in an MBA program. They learned it by managing overlapping responsibilities for years. You've been holding timelines, people, expectation, consequences, and details all at once, often before you ever stepped into leadership. That kind of mental processing isn't chaos, it's integration. And integration is exactly what high-level business decisions require.
In business, the hardest problems are rarely simple. They involve trade-offs, timing, people, risk, downstream impact, and Type A women are already practiced at considering those variables simultaneously. The issue is that this kind of thinking often gets framed as overthinking instead of what it actually is: contextual analysis. When stakes are high, simplistic thinking fails. The ability to see how decisions ripple outward is a leadership skill, not a liability.
This is where many Type A women start doubting themselves. Because when you take context seriously, decisions take longer. You don't just look at what's faster or easiest. You look at what's sustainable. You consider people, systems, capacity, and timing. From the outside, that can look like hesitation, but from the inside, it's responsibility. You're not stuck, you're evaluating impact.
The problem isn't that Type A women think they're too much. It's that they're rarely taught how to close the loop on their thinking. Context processing without a decision framework turns into mental load, but context processing with structure becomes strategy. This is where many Type A women are underutilizing one of their greatest assets: the ability to make decisions that hold up over time, not just in the moment.
Another advantage Type A women bring into business is continuity. You remember conversations. You remember why decisions were made. You remember what's been tried before, what worked, and what didn't. That isn't trivia. That's institutional knowledge. In leadership, continuity builds trust. Teams feel safer when someone understands the full story, not just what's happening in the current moment.
This also shows up in follow-through. Type A women tend to feel responsible for outcomes, not just tasks. That means you track details across time. You notice when something slips. You catch gaps that others miss. In business, that level of attention creates consistency, and consistency is what turns strategy into execution. The downside is that without boundaries, this strength turns into carrying things that were never meant to stay on your plate.
Here's where things go sideways. Because the same traits that make Type A women effective are often mislabeled when they're misunderstood. Context becomes drama, responsibility becomes control, follow-through becomes perfectionism, and once those labels get attached, women start trying to shrink the very skills that made them valuable.
This is especially true in environments that reward speed over sustainability. Fast decisions are praised, big personalities are celebrated, and quieter forms of leadership like pattern recognition, anticipation, and long-term thinking get overlooked. Type A women don't lack confidence, they lack language that accurately describes what they're doing and why it matters.
This is where understanding your Type A pattern becomes critical, because these strengths show up differently depending on how you respond to pressure. Hustlers often use integrative thinking to push harder. They see everything that needs to be done and then try to do all of it. Their advantage is execution, speed, and responsibility. The risk is burnout.
Overplanners use these same strengths to build systems and frameworks. They see connections and possibilities quickly. They anticipate problems before they happen. Their advantage is foresight, and their risk is delay. Without structure, context processing turns into endless preparation instead of decision making.
Avoiders often use discernment to filter. They notice misalignment early. They sense when something isn't right or when expectations are unclear. Their advantage is selectivity. Their risk is disengagement. Without clarity, discernment becomes avoidance instead of strategy.
When type A women don't understand these patterns, they internalize frustration. They assume the problem is personal, and they think they're too sensitive or too intense. In reality, they're using advanced cognitive skills without guidance on how to deploy them efficiently. No one taught them to aim their strengths.
That's why generic advice rarely works. Care less, let it go, stop thinking so much. None of that helps someone whose advantage is thinking deeply and caring about outcomes. The answer isn't to become less capable, it's to become more intentional.
The shift for type A women isn't about personality change, it's about strategy. When you understand what your brain is good at, you can design your work to use those skills on purpose. That might mean building decision frameworks that help you move faster without losing depth. It might mean setting clearer boundaries around what you track and what you let go.
This is where business starts feeling different, because instead of fighting how you're wired, you start working with it. You stop apologizing for thinking in layers. You stop shrinking your leadership style. And you start recognizing that what feels heavy isn't your competence, it's the lack of structure around it.
Type A women don't burn out because they're weak. They burn out because they've been using the same strength everywhere all the time without adjustment. Over time, that drains energy and erodes confidence. But when those same strengths are applied selectively, they become powerful.
And this is the difference between effort and leverage. Type A women already know how to work hard. What changes everything is learning how to direct that work so it compounds instead of depletes. Type A women don't need to become less driven, less thoughtful, or less responsible to succeed in business. Those traits are already working for you.
What you need is clarity about how these strengths show up under pressure and how to use them on purpose instead of on autopilot.
Because when your strengths are directed, they stop feeling like a burden and start functioning like the advantage they were always meant to be.